about this Forbes 30 under 30, and you needed to go get a photo shoot.
Yes.
And then what happened?
So we tried to find a photographer here in San Francisco, but upon searching, the cheapest photographer we could find was $2,000 per hour. So yeah, that's just not possible. So we decided to just rent the equipment from Amazon and buy our own backdrop, which is like very, very affordable. Decided to do our first shot, sent it to the Forbes team, and they were like, nope, go rent a photographer. But then we asked what's wrong with it, and then they gave us some feedback. So it's like building in public, right? Listen to the feedback. We decided to iterate again, and thankfully upon the second iteration we managed to do it. We took it in our apartment, so if you see the raw files, then you could have seen our desks and our living room basically. But then they decided to, they cropped it.
They cropped out. Hey everybody, welcome to the Build in Public podcast. I'm your host KP, and on this show, I interview world-class entrepreneurs, ambitious startup founders, creators, and builders on the internet who are boldly building the future in public. This podcast is my excuse to take you all on a curious journey to understand, learn, and hopefully be inspired by the worldviews, insights, and stories of these fabulous people changing the world. So far, I've gotten the rare privilege to sit down with incredible guests like Gary Vee, Alexis Ohanian, Kat Cole, Sahil Levingia, and many more leaders. So check out the full podcast listing at buildingpublicpodcast.com. Now buckle up and get ready for our latest episode. Hello everybody, I'm KP and welcome to yet another episode of Build in Public podcast. Today I'm joined by a very young and talented and high caliber, high potential, high promise founder joining us from Silicon Valley, from SF. And, I want to let her introduce herself and talk about the startup that she's building. Welcome to the show, Michelle Marcelline.
Thank you so much, KP. I'm honored to be here.
Why don't you give the audience a quick 30-second, 60-second intro about who you are, and then let's talk about Type Dream.
Of course. My name is Michelle. I was born and raised in Indonesia. I moved to the US in 2015 for college. And after I graduated from college, I've been building startups ever since. And the latest one is...
And what is the latest startup you're working on?
Type Dream. It's a no-code website builder with a Notion-like interface. So if you're familiar with Notion, you must like Type Dream.
The common threads that you and I both have, Michelle, is no code.
Yes.
Of course, being an immigrant to the US, because, I talk about this a lot on my podcast. Mm-hmm. I moved here in 2011 as an Indian immigrant, like a student, just like you, on an F1 visa. I don't know how many people know here about that. And, so the struggles, the visa maze that people talk about has been fascinating and sometimes exhausting. And I'm sure you can relate. And yes. The third thing that I think you and I have in common, apart from these two, is around the principles of building in public. Mm-hmm. And being super open and vulnerable on Twitter and sharing the journey, chapter by chapter. I love that about you. And I think I've seen your Oven Visa, announcement and like the way the whole thread kind of unpacked your story. And yes. It was so beautiful to watch. And I was rooting for you from then.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So let's dive into your backstory a little bit, because I've read a little on the internet that this is not your first startup. Type Dream mm-hmm. is the latest one, but of course you had built something else before that got acquired. Like, I want to understand where, first of all, let's talk about the first ever startup you created mm-hmm. and bring us to the present from there.
Okay, let's do that. So I would say it will go all the way back to 2015. So first year of college, that's where I met my co-founders for the first time. It was in our first computer science class in college. We were grouped to build school projects together, but ever since then we've been building projects outside of school together. That led to the first startup we built right out of college, which is Robinhood for Southeast Asia, in which we wanted to allow Southeast Asians to trade US stocks, because the stocks there are not as appealing as US stocks. We got into Y Combinator with that idea as well, but after a few months of pursuing that idea, we decided that we needed to move on because the regulations were pretty hard to get, like the licenses and everything.
Right.
So we moved on to our second idea, which is Cotter. It's a passwordless authentication, so to allow you to add, login, and sign up to your websites without any code.
Wow.
That's how we got into no code as well.
Right.
Actually,
So what was the genesis behind Cotter? Like what made you, what was the origin story of,
yes.
why you wanted to build passwordless auth?
So when we built the first idea, Robinhood for Indonesia, we realized that authentication in developing countries, including Indonesia and most Southeast Asian countries, are quite different than the one in the US, such that people there don't use email and password. They use phone number and
Right.
one-time password instead. So we kind of built the thing for ourselves, but when we pitched our app, like stock trading app, to our potential partners, the partners were impressed with how we handled our login.
Interesting.
So once we decided we couldn't pursue with the stock trading app, we thought, why not white label this product instead, right? Yeah,
I love
so
that.
that was how Cotter was born.
Very smart. And I can relate to the OTP part because, even in India, it baffles me that a lot of the, when I go back and visit, like
Yes.
my mind's become so Americanized that like I assume that everyone's got an email, but actually
Yes.
everyone's just got a cell phone number, right? And it's like WhatsApp is crushing it, in India. I'm sure it's the same in like,
It's
even
the
in
same in
Indonesia.
Indonesia.
Yeah. And so a lot of the times I notice this with my sister, if who's in India, and if we were like, signing up for, I don't know, some retailer, some, Nike discounts or whatever, it's always they ask you a phone number and it's OTP through the phone number. I'm like, wow. So it was very interesting how the same email one time sort of like here we have the magic link, right? With Notion
Yes.
has magic link and so on. I think there it's more so it's based on SMS. So it's very smart. Now, how did you scale that? What was your journey around like growing that, product?
At first, we targeted developers, so like regular companies. We hadn't heard about no code back then, so we just targeted regular companies in developing countries, mostly in Southeast Asia, because that's our domain expertise. But after doing quite a lot of B2B sales, we realized that first, we don't have any B2B sales experience since we just got out of college. And the second one is that developers don't like to use other companies' service. They like to build everything in-house because they
Right.
can.
Right.
And that is how we discover this whole new market of no code, in which people would rather build and ship as quickly as possible, and they would pay for other services if they need to, right? And so we branched ourselves to target no code. So we built like plugins for Webflow, Bubble, and other website builders so people can add, login, and sign up to their sites. And some like during around late 2020 or early 2021, people started asking for plugins for Notion.
Right.
So we were confused. Why would you need sign up or login for Notion?
Right.
Turns out people say that, oh yeah, we use Notion to build our websites.
Right.
That got us more confused. I mean,
Right.
there are lots of other website builders out
Right.
there. Why did you choose Notion, right? And then they said, we just love Notion so much because the interface is very familiar.
Right.
Like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and who cannot use Google Docs or Microsoft Word, right? Whereas to them, Webflow and Bubble still has some learning curve to tackle. It's not as straightforward as a note-taking app.
Right.
And then, so we decided to dig deeper because we thought, oh, there's an opportunity here.
Right.
We decided to dig deeper by interviewing them and asking them what is needed from Notion as a website builder that Notion doesn't have. Because there must be, right? Notion is a note-taking app. If you were to use this as a website builder, then there must be something else needed. And they mentioned like two very important points. First one is buttons.
Right.
Every website needs a button, need a CTA, but there's no default way to make that. There's some hacky way, like as a workaround, but there's no default way. And then the second one is a navigation bar, a menu bar,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
right.
like a core component of a website, but
Right.
Notion doesn't have that. And again, there's a hacky way, but no intuitive way to do it. So yeah, I think we've validated our market enough. And we didn't only interview one or two users. We decided to look for more websites built on Notion and reach out to them.
Right.
After getting enough validation, we decided to build TypeDream, which is an independent no-code website builder, but with the Notion interface.
Very cool. I love it. I think, the making sure that you're talking to customers from the get-go and really plugging in the holes and the gaps that, that exist in the
Mhm.
market is the classic, founder advice, right? It's a great
Yes.
job there. The other thing, I mean, of course, I relate to both of those points. Like I think around the fact that there are so many. I mean, I've built maybe like 7, 8 node Webflow websites, and I
Yes.
used Squarespace before. I still have a Squarespace website,
Mm-hmm.
but something about Notion is so appealing. And ever since I started using Notion as a website
Mm-hmm.
builder sort of like interface, I
Mm-hmm.
think I have like 6 or 7, low key Notion based sites. Like there's one thing called nocodecheatsheet.com that I built
Mm-hmm.
using Notion. And then, there's like a numerous number, like now there's so many, like I think there's tweetcheatsheet.com, a few others that I just for fun, because it's
Mm-hmm.
so like documenting stuff within Notion is so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have like a great template looking thing, you just want to have a little, like a navigation or a button, and just
Yeah.
make it and make it pretty and make it look like a website, right? So
Mhm.
that's definitely a great insight. Now let's talk about where you are today. Like that, it seems like that's your MVP or the first foray into the Notion market. Like where's
Yes.
Type Dream today?
So TypeDream today is no longer only for static sites. So previously you can only build landing pages, personal sites, anything static. But in a week, actually, we're planning to launch our second iteration of TypeDream, which is the ability for you to display anything with data, like database connection.
Right.
So you can build something like blogs, directory, knowledge base, in which you only need to design your page once, and you can simply display your data beautifully on your site.
Wow. So it's
Design
kind of like a
once, apply
CMS.
for multiple pages. Yeah, it is CMS.
Wow,
Exactly.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I feel like the ghost market, right?
Mhm.
If you've heard of ghost.org,
Yes.
I think it's massive, but there's still a learning curve to kind of like learn how to use Ghost, especially as a non-developer.
Hmm.
And I think that's a huge market gap that maybe you guys can fill, given you're already doing static stuff, right?
Yes.
The static stuff to me is kind of like, it comes in the same line as simple pinpoint like website builder solutions that are like simple like Linktree and like simple
Hmm.
stuff, right? But
Yeah.
then when you move to dynamic and CMS stuff, then you get
Hmm.
into blogs, like to your point, or even
Yes.
e-commerce maybe,
Hmm.
and galleries and stuff like that. So it's very exciting. It gets into the whole like Squarespace,
Yeah.
TAM.
Hmm.
However, as we know, Squarespace is, I don't know, $20 billion market cap. So it's like there's a huge opportunity there. So fascinating. Very excited. Keep me posted. I'd love to, if you guys are on Product Hunt, hit me up on that day. I'd love to leave a comment or check it out and give you some social capital. So,
Thank you so much for that, KP.
of course. So let's talk about your YC journey. I'm
Okay.
excited about, because you did just mention that you got into YC with another idea. Now, did you
Yes.
get into YC again for Type Dream, or were you referring to the same time?
That same time. So in YC, you can pivot multiple times.
Right.
They are okay with it because, from as far as I know, and according to my conversations with them, with the partners, and with my other YC batchmates, YC mostly invest in the founders
Right.
and not in the idea, because ideas can, like, people can
Morph. Yeah.
all the time, but team is what matters as an early stage company.
Right. Yeah, well said. I want to ask you about that. Like how if someone had no prior founder experience but wanted to get into YC, what
Mhm.
advice do you have for them?
I also didn't have any founder experience before getting into YC. I would say you will figure it out as you go. What matters to YC is how you can convince them that you and your co founders will stick together through thick and thin, and how we convinced the YC partners was at the time of applying to YC, I was already building multiple projects with my co-founders for 4 years throughout college.
Wow.
And we've stuck together for that amount of time. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now, what was YC like? What are some things that YC is world class at? I mean, if in other words, pitch YC to me.
Okay. YC was an amazing experience for us, and I believe that it'll be a life-changing experience for other founders too. If you are just getting started, if you're super early and you don't have both capital, like enough capital to go, and connections. In our case, why it's very important to us can be broken down into 3 parts. The first one is because we're super early, we're not experienced at the time. So we didn't even know simple stuff like when we wanted to build our trading app for Southeast Asia, or Robinhood, we spent multiple weeks on building an app for iOS, Android, and for web. And just through our first ever meeting with our group partner, they gave us a clarity in which they asked us, okay, what's your target market and what do they use there? Like, what are most of their phones? If it's an Android, just focus on Android and validate your idea first before spending weeks and weeks developing apps for iOS and web. Yeah, so if you're inexperienced, then they will give you clarity like that. Whatever you share, they will have enough experience to tell you, don't do that, validate your idea, talk to your customers. That was really, really important to us. And then the second one, fundraising. I'm not lying about this one, but once you have the YC brand, it's like a kid going into Stanford. Once you have the Stanford brand, I don't know, but it's definitely way easier for you to find jobs, right? Compared to
Right.
if you don't have that brand. Same with YC. Once you have that brand, I'm not kidding, but you can raise at a really good valuation just because you have the YC brand.
Right.
And then the third one, connection. If your business is B2B especially, your first few customers would probably be your YC batchmates. Aside from that, again, once you have the YC brand, it's easier for you to just network with people because they see higher, like you are seen highly. And then, yeah, I would say those 3 things.
Right. Now, so you were there for 3 months? Were you there in person?
3 months, yes. In person, but the demo day was online because of COVID.
COVID, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, what was one special memory you had from, your time there? Anything that stands out? Anything that's specific that, with your co-founders, all of you coding away, hacking away something in the night, or any fun memory that you can recollect?
I would say the most memorable thing that we got in YC is it was just any other dinners we had every Tuesday, but that Tuesday the guest was the Airbnb co-founders, so we were amazed at how like we're now so close just because we got into YC. It's very cool.
That sounds surreal. Yeah, it sounds fun. So let's zoom past that and get to your product hunt launch, right? You guys had, this is like July or June 2021, you had a massive product hunt launch?
Yes, July 2021.
Yeah, congrats on that. That was epic. I saw that. So let's talk about that. Like, I think I have a question around what are some underrated aspects of a product hunt launch playbook? What are some things that were non-obvious to you in the beginning that were super important in the playbook that you had when you launched?
Okay. So if I read other people's playbooks or even Product Hunt's guide itself, they mostly focus on the launch day itself. So like making the assets beautiful, making the blurb straightforward and stuff like that. But I believe that what is underrated is the effort prior to the launch. And I believe that it is done through building in public, in which you build an audience before that. You talk to your potential customers, you iterate your product based on their feedback, and then the launch, because once you have a big community, then the launch is just natural. Like, they will naturally support your launch, right?
Right. Noel said, I mean, you this is music to my ears, as you know, right? This is exactly what I've been preaching and talking about all the time.
Yeah.
So and I loved how, like I said at the beginning, I loved how you've embraced building in public principles. in your own unique way, right? And so that's what I wanted to maybe double click on here. Let's talk about some building in public experiments that you tried out
Okay.
and the ones that actually worked.
The ones that actually worked are the ones that come from me as a founder and not from the company's account, because we also do building in public from both
Right.
the founder's account and from the company's account. And that's because I feel like people will love to hear other people's story more than a company story, because a company will indirectly be marketing. Like,
Right.
realize it or not, people will think that you're doing some kind of a marketing thing. But with founders, you're just talking to people, candidly. And I share more about my journey, my successes, failures, almost everything there. So I believe that if I fail, then people shouldn't fail from the same reason as I did, because why would people waste their time for that? And I did that because I also read other people's build in public thread, and I learned from their journey and not repeat their mistakes.
I love it. I see the larger than self purpose, in what you're doing, which is admirable. So let's talk about some growth channels. Like, so are you using Twitter? I mean, you talked about building in public through your personal account. So I'm assuming this is in reference to your Twitter account, right? Your personal account.
Yes.
Have you tried YouTube, TikTok, in like LinkedIn? Like, I'm curious about all these growth channels personally, because I haven't tried much of other things, but I want to in 2022. So definitely would love to see if you have any experience with any experiments you ran.
No experiments with other channel yet, but it's also my 2022 goal to tap into TikTok.
Right.
Yes.
I think you would crush it on TikTok. I'm hearing great things about TikTok, that there's a new wave of like founder content. And apparently, this is like super surreal when I heard about it. The people are saying like there's a whole, segment of people who are not going to Google for product discovery or product recommendations. They're not even going to YouTube or not even going to Twitter or Product Hunt. They're going directly to TikTok for product discovery. And I'm fascinated by that, because I was like, wow, because, remember like 5-6 years ago, if you wanted like product discovery, like every time you thought about Product Hunt, right?
Yes.
But apparently now there's a lot of content on TikTok around tools, infrastructure, platforms, SaaS products and ideas, that you can use. So I'm really fascinated myself too. There's a lot of founder content there.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit around your Forbes 30 under 30, recognition. Congratulations there. It's very cool to watch the story. I love I think there was a little, I mean, I can't exactly remember, but I feel like you kind of were showing how scrappy and bootstrapped your team was. That you couldn't just talk us a little bit about that. You had sent an email about this Forbes 30 under 30 and you needed to go get a photo shoot.
Yes.
And then what happened?
So we tried to find a photographer here in San Francisco, but upon searching, the cheapest photographer we could find was $2,000 per hour. And
with the studio, I bet, right?
Yeah, for the studio. So studio and the photographer.
Yeah,
you have to have both of them separately, right? But we have 5 co-founders, so we'll have like, let's say 10 minutes for the group photo, and then I don't know, 10 minutes each for each one of us. That sums up to 1 hour. And we're not camera ready such that we can just pose whenever, regular models. We would need to think how to pose. We're not natural like that in front of the camera. So yeah, that's just not possible. So we decided to just rent the equipments from Amazon and buy our own backdrop, which is like very, very affordable. Decided to do our first shot, sent it to the Forbes team, and they were like, nope, go rent a photographer. But then we asked, what's wrong with it? And then they gave us some feedback. So it's like building in public, right?
Right.
Listen to the feedback. We decided to iterate again. And thankfully, upon the second iteration, we managed to do it.
That's so fun. I mean, did they know what you were doing? Did they know that you were like iterating, kind of like bootstrapping, trying to get this photo shoot done by the team?
I believe so, because we still had to send the raw files to them.
Right.
And we took it in our apartment. So if you see the raw files, then you could have seen our desks and our living room, basically. But then they decided to, they cropped it.
They cropped out. Hey, that's pretty cool of them to like, roll with it, right? Because they
Yeah,
didn't like, I mean, they looks like they were not super high strung about the backdrops and whatnot. But
yeah,
they came out really great. I looked at them just earlier. The yellow
yeah.
background and the gold background, I think is fantastic. So, that was a fun story. I loved it. So let's also touch on your, I mean, Owen journey and that whole thread that you wrote. The Owen visa is what I'm referring to here for the
Yeah.
folks who haven't never heard about the visa category. Owen, congrats on that. It's a
Thank you.
pretty, I know a lot of folks on deck and a lot of folks in YC, a lot of folks on my Twitter follow me and, who I chat with who have been aspiring for that visa category and wanted to get
Mhm.
in. And there's a lot of confusion around this, as I'm sure you know this. And I think a lot of even self doubt, around,
Yes.
am I even like extraordinary to be
Yes.
qualified? Which to me is
Uh-huh.
ludicrous because, I believe that, I believe that it shouldn't be that like it shouldn't shouldn't compare yourself with like some Serena Williams or something,
Yes,
you
yes,
know.
yes.
But let's talk about it. So congrats on it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and give me a little backstory of what that visa category is for the audience who doesn't know about it,
Mhm.
and why you needed that visa and what it meant to you, and then what it means now for your company because now you're stable.
Yes. So the first point, what is an O1 visa? So O1 visa is an extraordinary ability visa. I know it sounds I like who would think themselves as extraordinary,
Right,
but we consulted with a few YC founders who are also immigrants and they recommended us to get this visa. And that is how we know how extraordinary we need it to be
right,
by comparing ourselves to them, which is more concrete than comparing myself to athletes, right?
right. Or Nobel Prize winners or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Uh-huh. This visa can like O1A are for startup founders, O1B, I believe, are for artists, athletes, and similar professions. So we consulted with other YC founders who were also immigrants, and they recommended us a lawyer to work with, and we decided to work with this lawyer. They're super great, and the five of us got it, which is a very huge deal because I know if one got it, then okay, it's good. But all
right,
five of us with very similar background, we must be doing something right, right?
right. How
And then
long did it take to go from application to final announcement?
technically, if you have everything, then you can just collect all of your documents in a week or two and apply. You can always pay for an expedite in which you get a decision, yes or no, in 2 weeks. But it took us 6 to 9 months, and that's because we basically had to work
Yeah,
for our application such that they require us to be a judge in
startup.
other
Yeah, like
companies.
a
So we had to apply to hackathons and wait for them to actually host a hackathon, right?
right,
We had to be a member of prestigious organizations. Y Combinator and On Deck are some examples, but yeah,
right.
we had to work on it as well because one is not enough. We had to have some PRs, like publications. So, but thankfully at the time, Typeroom was covered in Tech in Asia as well as in Forbes. So yeah, we had to wait 6 to 9 months for everything to complete everything.
Mm,
But let's say you already have all that, then it's as simple as collecting all the documents and submitting it to the lawyer.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's also another underrated. I feel like it's another underrated topic, like even a category as such for immigrants in America, because I think a lot of people don't even think about the O1 category. A lot of them are so focused on H1B
Mm-hmm.
or EB1, EB2, all these other categories. But I only learned about it, I think, 2-3 years ago, and I've been here for 11 years,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like one of the underrated categories. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm hoping, through your story and through like a lot of stories that I publicly talk about, I'm hoping to bring more spotlight into that category because
Mm-hmm.
just like you said, I think America, as a country and the economy could benefit from high caliber immigrants, who are not shackled by all kinds of like stupid visa categories that are very limiting and they're not really helping them to start companies or build or create more jobs. So
Mm-hmm.
I think Owen is a great path, and I think it should be more celebrated and like publicized even more. So,
Yes, yes. I know
um,
that like the EB3 is probably a more stable option because it's a green card, right? But O1 is a really recommended path as well because although it's only for 3 years, but you can technically renew it forever. So
Right.
yeah,
You can
it's
keep renewing. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah.
that's right. Awesome. So, what's top of mind for you in the next quarter? Like, what are you focusing on as personally, and what are you focusing on as a company?
Personally, I would love to finally start building in public on TikTok because, as you mentioned, there's a new generation of people, probably the new Gen Zs, in which they treat TikTok as their main search engine. For the company, I would say we want to make efforts on Web3 because it's an up and coming category, and I believe that the entire internet will eventually move towards Web3 in, I would say, 10 years because it's
Right.
not an easy step, right? But we have started efforts on that and we want to continue on that. The efforts that we've started is 6 months ago, people wanted to purchase NFTs, right? I don't know if they understand it at all or not, but they wanted to jump on the hype train and purchase NFTs and display that somewhere as their identity.
Right.
So we enabled that by allowing them to embed their NFTs to their personal site. So in your personal site, you can showcase the NFTs you have. After that, the popularity shifted into people trying to make their own NFTs and allow their community to mint it.
Wow.
So we enabled a one-page website with a mint button for
Right.
people to do that, no code.
Right.
Web3 is still a new space and we're still constantly following what's happening there. So our next iteration would be sign up or login, but using your token or NFT.
MetaMask. Okay.
Yeah. By connecting your MetaMask and confirming whether or not you have the token. So right now, if you want to log into YC, you'll have to have an email and
Password.
right? But now, if you, let's say you have one YC token, then you can log into YC, something like that.
Fascinating. Yeah. I think it's a very novel and like nascent, technology space. And just like you said, it's going to be a big shift for all of us to get into that new model. It'll happen. I think it'll just maybe take time.
Yeah.
Just like the 1999, 2000 .com era, right? It took time. It was not overnight.
Exactly.
But it is happening. I do definitely love the ease of use of the MetaMask logins. It's just been so fascinating. Like, anytime you have to log in, you can just use MetaMask and boom, you don't need to remember your password.
Yes.
So it's been a refreshing, thing. So awesome. Really excited for all the developments that you just described. Excited for your personal journey and, more building in public experiments. Keep me posted. Would love to, track, follow you and see your TikTok experiments as well. And maybe get on there myself, when I get some time. And wishing all the best for Type Dream too.
Thank you so much, KP.
Awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.